How about we do like 30-second intros? I think that doesn't eat too much time up. And really, we're just looking for understanding what your role is, what you've been doing for the past few years, and we'll do the same just before we jump into the presentation.
Sounds good.
And if you want, we could just do the order that we're showing in as people in the chat. It looks like by last name, A's first.
Okay, I don't know if I can see what you're seeing, but I'll go ahead and go first because I know I've got an A last name. So my name is Rachel Austin. I work on the grants monitoring unit. I've been here for a little over 2 years. 2 years, 3 months, 2 years, 2 months, something like that. And prior to that, I did victim services, graduated with my degree in criminology, and I worked with victims of crime for about 10 years. Transitioned into grants management and homeless services midway, working with a nonprofit who served victims and community members experiencing or at risk of homelessness. And then I did grants management and oversaw the finance department there. Did I answer the questions, the appropriate questions?
Thank you.
Okay. All right, I'll pass it on to whoever's got an A or a B last name. I don't think I'm seeing what you're saying.
Rachel. The next one is Rachel, right? Rachel, you are muted. Oh, sorry. It's George.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jorge. I work as an analyst for the technical assistance unit team. I have been here for almost 2 years. And the programs that I am working on, I have been working is the HAP and the ERF. And prior to this, I have worked for CAL FIRE until the finance department. So pass it on to whoever is next. I don't know. I'm not able to see the list either.
Looks like Jaspreet.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jaspreet Baines. I'm a technical analyst with Cal ICH. I've been here about 8 or 9 months now. Previously, I worked with EDD, various positions with them for about 6 years.
I'll go next. Hi, I'm Laura Batiste, and I've been with ICH for about 5 months. I'm a grant admin analyst, and I've worked both in the private sector and also with state programs. I've worked as a consultant to school districts throughout California for a construction program and grant funding, and also as a state certified real estate appraiser years back. And so now the homelessness sector is brand new to me, and I'm really enjoying learning about it, and glad that I can contribute to this. So thank you.
Looks like Stefan would be next.
Sounds good. Thank you, Danielle. Hey everyone, my name's Steven. I'm with the Policy and Program Support Homelessness team in the Housing Policy Development Division at HCD. I've been here about 4 years. And since I've been here, I've worked on programs like HomeKey and done some coordination with Cal ICH more on like the action planning and housing first policy and things like that, giving our perspective from HCD and how we're implementing those things and what activities we're contributing to the action plan, just helping coordinate our input, HCD's input into those things. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Andy Clausen. I'm a grant administration analyst here at Cal ICH. I'm going on my 3rd year here, and I've developed contracts for the HAP, ERF, FHC, and tribal programs.
Okay, looks like Jocelyn would be next.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jocelyn Davis, and I'm an analyst for the Cal ICH Grants Admin Unit team. I've been here for almost a year. And then prior to my current role, I was working at Cover California for 7 years. And yeah, that's about it.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Linda. I'm an analyst on the program implementation team. The main 2 grants that we work on are encampment resolution and family challenge grants. Prior to this, I was an executive fellow with the Office of the Secretary at BCSH. And prior to that, I came from an immigration services and social activism background in San Francisco. So kind of found my way from grassroots organizing into advocating at the state level.
Gina, it's your turn.
Thank you. Gina Ferguson, I've been with HCD since 2021, so just about for 3 years. Prior to that, I was with another state housing finance agency, the California Tax Credit Allocation Committee, was there for a number of years. So I still am learning HCD processes and ways, and so really excited to present on some of that for you today.
Thank you. Okay. Looks like John, you're next. Go ahead.
There we go. Hey, my name's John, and I used to work at HCD back in 2015 to 2017, Gina, just when the VHHP program was getting started. I remember trying to wrestle to get more positions for the program. And now I'm helping out with the transition effort as a consultant, working with Danielle.
I think I'm next. My name's Carrie Howitson, and I'm an office technician with Cal ICH. I've been here 3 years. Years ago, I was a stockbroker and a banker, but for many years, I was a stay-at-home mom, and I had an interior decorating business. And then I was at Sacramento Food Bank and Family Services for 5.5 years. And one of my clients actually came into the food bank. And so homelessness and poverty can happen to anyone. I did all of their rooms, but she got fibromyalgia and he lost his job. And so I just have a lot of compassion for people that are, low income and needing housing and resources and everything. So, but it was just amazing to see that, Anyway, I've been here for 3 years, and I'm just, we are keeping track of everything HCD teaches us so that we can be fully on board and stuff when we start. So thanks very much.
Hey everyone, Michelle Livingston. I'm a grants monitoring analyst. I've been with Cal ICH for 4.5 years. And before that, I did legislative analysis, and I've worked on all of the grants at Cal ICH.
Thank you. I think I'm next. It doesn't show me in the list, but probably for everybody, it doesn't show yourself. My name is Danielle Lynch, and I'm performing change management here with the transition along with John. I'm so grateful to have him and his historical knowledge of the department and the programs, and so invaluable resource for sure. Awesome. Glad to have you with me, John. I started my state service back at EDD as well, and I did disability insurance claims, and I really enjoyed doing the work and helping people. And I was sad to see it go, but I'm glad that I can still help with people just through the process of change now. So that's me. Looks like Molly's next.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. I apologize for the glare. I got a big old window behind me. But I'm Molly. I've been with CaliCH for just over 2 years now, on the grants monitoring unit. Before then, I was the program manager for a continuum of care in Monterey, for the Monterey Salinas continuum of care. So I've been in the homeless world for a couple years now. I'm really looking forward to hearing more about what HCDS offers.
Thank you. Looks like Sarah, you're next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Mahmoud, and I'm one of CalICH's staff working on program implementation on the implementation team, the program implementation team. And we work on all grants programs with respect to implementation, so HAP, ERF, and FHC. Not sure who's next.
I think is that me? I couldn't see myself, but Becky Mo, I joined the Division of State Financial Assistance since 2020. So currently I'm a specialist for Supernova program, but prior to my affordable housing work, I work in the division of codes and standard within HCD. So over there, we handle a lot of registration renew and mobile home transfers.
Thank you. Looks like Amber's next.
Hi, happy Friday. I'm Amber Phillips. I've been with HCD/HPD going on 3 years. And I work just like Stephen in the homelessness and policy and program support division. I love my team. We're excellent people, so we're excited to be able to work with all the new CaliCH people coming in. And can I just say, Carrie, I love your personality. It's so bubbly. It's so bubbly. Yes, you girl. Yes, it's bubbly. Prior to that, I was a teacher for 17 years and a principal in New York City. So, and worked with children who were unhoused as well. So I've always had a heart for homelessness, low income, you name it. That tugs at my heart. So thank you.
I think I'm next. Hello, my name is Brian Ridgway. I also work as a team with Stephen and Amber as part of the policy and program support for homelessness. I've been at HCD for 6 years. I started in our program design and implementation unit where I remember Becky. Hi, Becky. Worked over there on our climate change programs in HSC, affordable housing and sustainable communities, and glad to be here. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Jaleesa Stanford. I am on the grants admin team for CalICH. I've been here since November 2021. I am the lead grants admin analyst on the HAP contracts. When I first started, we were on the HAP 3 initial contract, so I've been here since then. Prior to this, I worked and started my state service at the prisons. So I worked for CDCR, actually on the medical side of the house and dealing with the mental health patients and groups and things like that. I did that for 6 years, 7 years. So dealing with that transition, dealing with the inmates with mental health issues, transitioning to get reacclimated back into society, really brought me into the homeless aspect of things. So it was nice to see this side of the house and how things operate and work, and try to get something started on this side of on the streets for them. And that's about it.
Thank you. And Gina, I kind of wanted to open the floor because I definitely heard a couple more people join in. I'm not sure anyone who hasn't gone yet. If you want to pop in and say hi and what area you're with and maybe what got you here or where you started your state service.
Hi, my name is Gulale, and I am one of the grant analysts on the program implementation team. Before that, I was working with an international organization called International Rescue Committee, and currently I am doing some work with HAP and ERF.
Thank you. Anybody else want to go before we jump into the meeting?
Thank you. I know that really took some of our presentation time, but it really helps us to know who we're speaking to. I think we can modify our talking points a little bit. So thanks. And I will hand it over to Becky.
Well, thank you, Gina. So let me share my screen. Can you guys see it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. And, first and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone for the opportunity on the Friday afternoon, for your interest in learning about the VHHP program. So the full name of the VHHP program is Veterans Housing and Homelessness Prevention Program. And today with me is Gina Ferguson, and she is my big boss. She is the branch chief over the Supernova program. And I used to be a program manager for the VHHP program, but later I promoted to be the housing specialist. So we are happy to be here. And actually, veterans, they are a soft spot for me. So I'm super, super excited for the presentation, even though it's on the Friday afternoon. So let's dive into it. So for the VHHP program, it's the Bill AB 639 that gives that creates the program, and funding allocation is about $600 million. And Gina, if you can monitor the chat, all the hands, who raise up the hands, that would be awesome because I couldn't see anything. So thank you. And so the first round of the VHHP program is back in 2014. And now you can see 10 years passed. And we have successfully implemented 8 rounds of NOFA. And I think the total awards is about $550 million. So we are about to use up all the funds, but veterans is such a special population. I foresee the governor office will give us extra money to continue the program. So by the statute, we have 3 eligible housing types. There are supportive housing. We are eligible to construct supportive housing units, affordable housing units, and transitional units. So of the 3, the most popular is the supportive housing units. There are many reasons, but one of the major reason is by statute that we need to have certain percentage of the total VHHP assisted units in one project to be supportive housing. So that is required by statute. And I also want to highlight that this is also a statute requirement that the program should be implemented by Department of CalVet as well as HCD. So it's 2 department collaboration effort. And So, we have our strengths, we each have different strengths, such as HCD, we do financial feasibility, we develop application, we do workshops, we do the threshold scoring, financial feasibility, and and then we move on to executing standard agreement for the projects receive VHHP award. So we do the financing part and implementation. And CalVet, they come in with their veterans expertise. So their main responsibility is to review the DBBE requirement as well as the supportive services plan. So I will elaborate a little bit more about the DBBE in my next slide. But truly, it's a collaboration effort. The collaboration of two departments that makes the program last so far, 8 rounds of NOFA, that's a lot. So with that, we turn to the next screen. That is, the topic we are all very interested is how the VHHP program and homelessness. So I think there are a lot I can elaborate on, but due to the time, I only highlight few points on the screen. So the first one is the successful system. So the first one is DBBE. DBBE is short for Disabled Veteran Business Enterprise. So it's a certification coming from the Department of General Services. So like by VHHP program guideline require that 5% of the total construction cost needs to used to contract for services or anything that with the DBBE certified entities. So basically, in another word, the VHHP program not only it construct housing for veterans, it also provides job opportunity. So in my opinion, it's another way to stop homelessness, right? So that's the first system that I really feel, is quite valuable and very creative. And then the second system is the supportive services VHHP program provides. I mean, not provides, requires. So you can see on the chart that it is a comparison of the VHHP supportive services requirement compared with other HCD program. So, this is only a snapshot. Like I can go on and on and on simply because, there are so many requirements in the VHHP guideline, but in a snapshot. So as you can see, the first one is the case manager. VHHP guideline requires the education of a master degree, while other program, I don't think there is an education requirement. And then if you read through, you will see the case management and other plans. They are very customized to each tenant's need, right? And it is a requirement. And then VHHP program requires intensive case management as well as other services. It's a required. And compared with other program, they're not. So, it's good and bad. It's kind of very challenging for the lead service provider or the sponsor to really propose a supportive services plan that meets all these requirements and then implement it at a later time. But if we think from the perspective of a tenant, these other services they need, and these other services will help them to get back on their feet. So that's why, I know it's very challenging, it's very intensive, but I still want to give some credits to the supportive services. And that's why I think it's also a very successful system to end homelessness. Like once tenants move in and they feel being supported, and then they move on with their life rather than going back to homelessness. So that's the system. And I think, the system can be created in different ways to be successful and out of good intention, right? But it also needs people to implement it. And the people is HCD and CalVAT. So it's a collaboration. Again, it's a collaboration that we communicate very often. When I say HCD, I mean PDI, loan closing, and asset management compliance. So it's 3 internal HCD division with Department of CalVAT. We work together. And as for PDI, so one of the best practice is I think is good collaboration. So during Life NOFA, we pretty much meet with CalVAT on a weekly basis. And we, even though we do the financing part, we do the feasibility, we do the threshold and scoring, we always keep CalVAT in the loop of, why we come up with this conclusion, why we failed this application, not the others. And we also allow CalVAT to provide their feedbacks. And then, CalVAT, because they review the DVBE and supportive services, they are the person implementing those 2 systems. So they also provide feedback to us, like, because the DVBE is tied to the total construction cost. And we all know that from the time of being awarded until the permanent conversion, 2-3 years will pass, and with the inflation, all the costs will go up. So then how CalVAT can implement DVBE requirement? It requires collaboration with HCD because we review the financial part and we let CalVAT know that, hey, the cost has increased from 2.5 million to 3 million. And now you need to assess the DVBE requirement based on the 3 million. So with collaboration, there is no way that the sponsor can only they choose to disclose some information to CalVAT, not HCD, because we all keep each other in the loop. So I think that's one of the best practices, that we all stand in the same line and then we work together to implement the program. And the second best practice, I think, is hold people accountable, because it's I heard from external lenders and developers, and they were joking, but they call HCD money free money because it's a deferred payment. And then compared with the perm loan, it's really valuable to the projects, so that all the affordable housing projects, they want HCD money. But HCD money doesn't come free. It comes with all kinds of requirements, right? We have all these restrictions, and we want to hold developers accountable for those. So what happened is, developments, they encounter all kinds of issues and challenges. It's understandable, but we have some, not many, but we have few developers, when they have issues, they just give it a shot. Like they ask CalVAT, hey, can we get exemption for this? Can we do a waiver for that? And then again, it's back to the collaboration point, that HCD and CalVAT, we work together. As long as the sponsor notify one party, we keep the rest of the party know that what's going on for that project. And then we have meetings with the sponsor and we investigate in the reasons. And we ask a meeting with their local COC. Like, for example, if this is a lease-up issue, we will ask for a meeting with their local COC, their local VA office, or their housing authority. And we also ask for a letter, request the developer to detail the efforts that they try to lease up the units. We ask for many things before we can give them any flexibility. So we, this way, even though it takes lots of time from both department, but this is the best and effective way that we hold developers accountable. And the last best practice that come into my mind is understanding, understanding the needs of the tenants, which is veterans. Veterans is so different. Like when we say income, for example, me, when I say income, that's the income coming from the state paycheck, right? That's my only income. But for veterans, especially veterans with disabilities, it's kind of interesting that, they receive benefits, even though it's not in cash. But the benefits, it counts towards their income. So a real example is the veterans, they may only earn like 30% AMI. That's their income. But with benefits, it boosts up their income level to 50%. That's what happened now. So, back to the understanding is like we need to understand the veteran situation, their challenges, why they are, they end up being homelessness, and how we can help. So again, this is back to the point of collaboration that, HCD, we are not expert on veterans' need. So we always work with CalVet to see, okay, if there's any new policy regarding veterans eligibility or anything for the hot badge, anything that may impact the VHHP program, then we are interested to know, and we work with CalVet to evaluate the impact of the VHHP program. And by the beginning of each NOFA, we made adjustment to our guidelines and NOFAs. And then the last point, last but not least, is the understanding from the sponsor. So we want to be creative, and we want to come up with all kinds of requirements, right, to make sure our veterans get the most benefits out of the project. But I also want to be mindful that, all these requirements is burdens to the sponsors. And I think Supernova team, we really want to be open-minded and, keep our door open. If sponsors, they are willing to come up with any other solutions, any suggestions to simplify the application process, the award process, we are open to all of them. So, it's an understanding from all stakeholders that we need to construct housings for veterans. So that's the 2 successful systems and 3 best practices that I come up for today's presentation. So lessons learned, well, it cannot always be good. We always learn something. So the first lessons learned is identify the local need, because the housing VHHP program construct is not open to all. It has to have, the tenants has to have a veterans background. So we want to identify there is local need in the place where the new construction is going to be built. And we ask a letter from the VA office and a letter from their COC office. We want to certify, we want some level of certification to know there is the need. And then the second thing is, I know that all the developers, out of their good intention, they want to help the most vulnerable people, veterans. So they propose many 30% AMI units. I think it's good intention, but I also want to bring up to your attention that if there are too many 30% VHHP assisted units, it's hard to lease up. So, when I say too many, you wonder what is too many, right? So I would say if 60% of the entire units are VHHP assisted units, and they're all 30% AMI, that raises the red flag to me. And, we don't have any regulations or requirement to stop developers from constructing or proposing those units. but I think that warrants a call, a discussion with the developer, because we work together and we want, we give them funds, and we also want to make sure they construct a very successful project. We don't want them to start a project with, with the with the possible of failure in the future. And then the next one is, I think is, don't put too many restrictions on the VIP project, because this is a low income housing, so the income level is a restriction. And we also have the occupation restriction, which is veteran. We already have 2 restrictions, just for all the application. So on top of those, we want to be as flexible as we can. And then, for example, in this example, like if this is a senior project, which is a 3rd restriction, right? And then for those projects with these 3 layers of restrictions, and if we have too many 2-bedroom units, that's very problematic. And it's hard to resolve, because once the building is constructed, it's constructed with 2-bedroom units. And HCD, we couldn't say, okay, I don't see, let me just change it on paper, from 2-bedroom to 1-bedroom so that we can list up. No, we couldn't do that. So that's why be very careful. And when I say, again, too many, how many is too many? I would say within the senior VHHP project, if you see more than 3 2-bedroom VHHP senior units, that's concerning, if more than 3. And then the last one is the documentation. So, it's 10 years and people left the program for good, right? People retire, people receive promotion, they have other plans for their life. It's all good, but we want to leave good documentation for the people coming after us. So I think that's not, the last one is not the lessons learned only for VHHP program. I think it applies to all. And that's the end of my presentation, and I will give it to Gina.
Thank you. Any questions specific to VHHP, how it addresses homelessness? Any in the weeds questions before we kind of pivot a little bit? Yes, Carrie.
I just want to make sure I have your name right, because on the first side it said presenters are Gina Ferguson and Becky M.O. And then on your name tag it says SIYAOMO. Is that the same?
Yes, it's the same. So my legal name is Sayao Mo, but people don't always get it right. And just for the benefits of us all, I give myself a name, Becky. It's just easier for everyone.
Thank you. Yeah, so if you're emailing, use the Sayo, but I think Becky is preferred in conversation. Stephen, yeah.
Thanks, Gina. I think maybe it would be helpful if you could talk a little bit about how the referrals to units is a lot different for the veterans population versus just the general population experiencing homelessness. And then along those lines, also how financing supportive services for veterans looks a little different than general population because the resources through the VA.
Well, I think for the first question, I would defer to AMC because they work on monitoring of the projects and they work more closely with the referring agency. But you are right, you have a good point because the tenants we have, they are not general people experiencing homelessness. They are not general public. It has the occupation requirement veterans. So when we have any lease-up issues, we always want to involve the local VA office. That's something that's the nuances compared with other programs helping people with homelessness. So that's something I'm aware of. And then speaking of the financial part, I would say again, it's back to the point that the veterans, their benefits counts towards their income, right? So it's not saying with that, even though they are classified as 50% AMI, but it doesn't mean they have that money to pay for that rents. So for VHHP project, my observation is it requires vouchers. It can either come in from VA, the VASH vouchers or the Section 8 vouchers, because the vouchers covers their rents. So that helps the project cash flow. So did I answer your question, or your question is, regarding the financial is for some other aspects?
Well, I think that helps answer it. I'm just asking the question because, reviewing a HAP application, we might see an applicant wanting to use funds for a supportive housing project for veterans, and they might see some terminology that is just very specific to the veterans population, like the supportive services for veterans families, all those subsidies that they have through the VA that are specific to veterans experiencing homelessness. That's I don't know, maybe it's just too vague of a question, but I was just curious if you could just expand on that a little bit more, but I think you did, so that's all right. Thank you.
Yeah, and actually, there you just remind me of one point is I think again, see, that's a collaboration, right? I remember Sean from Calvet, and now he promoted to be from a program manager to assistant deputy director there. But I remember he told me that if the project received VASH vouchers, and then the case manager will come from VA, which is more tailored to veterans' need. And then it also helps to reduce the burden of the sponsor to locate a case manager. So that's also speaking back to the financing part. And then for the supportive services, like I'm not sure if you know HCD, not HCD, the UMR allows the part of the, not part, like some of the cost, the expenses for supportive services to to come out of the project operation. But the escalator for other programs is 2.5 by UMR. And then for VHHP, because our requirement for the supportive services is so high, the bar is really high. So the escalator for VHHP program is 3.5. So that's the nuances compared with other program, that we are able to allocate more funding out of the cash flow to cover the expenses for supportive services. Okay, so Sarah.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure, Stephen, I saw your hand go back up for a second. Did you have a follow-up question?
No, I don't. I put it up by accident.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, I'll try to be quick, because there's more of your presentation, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I hope maybe just, you don't have to elaborate, but when you're doing interagency review with Calvet of certain things that you need to send to Calvet for their review and feedback, could you give us advice on kind of what specifically you ask them to do in order to provide concrete feedback that then you can give back to the grantee to help them cure the application?
So Sarah, this is a big question, and we can email each other after the meeting. But just a quick answer is, so we pretty much involve Calvet in each step of our decision making. That's why we touch base on a weekly basis. And the most frequent feedback that we receive from Calvet for their concern is regarding the supportive services, because the bar is so high and not whole lot entity qualify. So at the time of application, Calvet, they see many entities, they don't qualify for funding. So we need to work together to see, you know, how flexible we can be and how to resolve the issue, because we don't want the program to be undersubscribed, but we also want to hold people accountable. So there is a fine line, right? And there is, well, we have many other discussion too that I'll email you after today's meeting.
That would be awesome. Thanks, Becky.
Yeah, no problem. So anything else before I turn it to Gina? Okay, silence is golden. Gina, take it from here.
Thank you, Becky. We're going to pivot a little bit because I believe there's some interest in generally how we operate, and then sort of we'll bring it back to VHHP, more VHHP specific in the end. So one thing that VHHP has gone through, which may or may not be similar to transitions that you may be experiencing, is that it was swept up in a bill that aligned 4 different programs. And so we had 3 loan programs, even though CERNA is called a grant program, it's actually a loan program. So we had 3 loan programs and 1 grant program that were brought together. And really the bill directed HCD to align the requirements and the awarding process as much as possible. And the purpose of that was to speed production, reduce costs, and decrease the length of time folks stayed within the HCD financing system before moving on to their final financing requests, which were typically low-income housing tax credits. And so VHHP kind of underwent a programmatic change in that we had 4 diverse programs, and VHHP had been operating as a standalone program, just as Becky described, with all the very unique statutory requirements related to supportive services and veterans. But it got drawn into alignment with the multifamily housing program, which is a more general housing finance program that didn't have a lot of very specific population targeting requirements like VHHP did. But regardless, it kind of underwent an overhaul. And Becky, feel free to jump in as needed to correct or add some detail. But the intent really was to make it a more effective program in that you could ask, folks may ask for VHHP funding, but then they may also ask for MHP funding. So we wanted the ability for those requests to be at the same time, the reviews to be nearly identical, and the funds to be awarded at the same time, with the intent that you're speeding your time at HCD, and then your inability as a sponsor or developer to move on to actual construction of the project. And then something else that we've also really been working through in the multifamily finance supernova program, or MFSN, is establish uniformity and predictability for applicants. So we want as much as possible for our requirements to be clear in the guidelines, clear in the application process, and that applicants know what to expect, and as much as possible, reduce the complexity of applying to HCD for these types of funds. Yes, thank you. Go on to the next screen. Becky, thank you. And so I wanted to jump back a little bit and talk a little bit about design, but also the way that VHHP functions in the branch, in the MFSN branch. So when AB 434 was implemented, we did go through an extensive design process. So we looked at the way the 4 different programs had been operating, really came up with what we hoped would be a starting point for uniformity, cut any extra or additional requirements that we felt like were not necessarily adding value. It might add to complexity, cost, or confusion. And as part of that, we did a pretty extensive stakeholder engagement outreach, and definitely an extensive public comment process. This may or may not be similar to anything that you're working on, but we wanted to highlight the fact that VHHP has undergone some transitions in the recent future, or in the recent past, and really the idea was alignment, integration, more uniformity across the HCD in terms of what stakeholders can expect, and also what we do internally for processes and procedures. We definitely had a lot of consultations with HPD, LAD, the loan closing branch, the asset management branch, because as Becky mentioned, we have one piece of the financing, but once it leaves our shop, it goes into loan closing, and then it goes into asset management. And so there may be things that we put in our guidelines related, as Becky said, related to supportive service plans, or related to how you implement tenant lease up, ensuring housing first requirements and practices are met. But we want those to be, we want to ensure that our AMC, our asset management, and our loan closing understand and that we're going in the right direction with our guidelines, so that we loop everyone across the whole train and across the whole timeline is looped in to understand what, and to ensure that we, when we're drafting those guidelines, are drafting them correctly to the perspectives and responsibilities that others have after us. One of the things that changed a bit for VHHP, and Becky can correct me if I'm wrong, is AB 434 did really kind of direct that MHP would be sort of the umbrella program, or the as much as possible, the guidelines and statutory requirements of MHP would also be folded into the other 4 programs. Now, VHHP is very unique in that it services veterans and homeless veterans. And so everything that's statutorily requirement and everything that's the intent of the statute, we wanted to keep for VHHP, while at the same time trying to align basic threshold requirements across those programs. MHP had a lot of phenomenal internal processes, controls, policies, training, very detailed staff tools. And I think that was one of the benefits of the four programs coming together, is we pulled those resources and applied them to the other programs. But for staff, it was a transition period, because we'd all be the 4 different programs had been operating in silos, and we were coming together and trying to create a unified and HCD really centric way of doing things. So folks were trained in the new program guidelines, but also really kind of went an overhaul and did a lot of training and guidance on, this is how we do an application threshold review. These are the tools that we use when there's these types of issues. That's when we elevate them to our manager. Same thing for scoring. Scoring can be very tricky because you're interpreting, same thing with threshold, you are interpreting guidelines, you're interpreting requirements, and there's certain level of, am I getting that interpretation right? I mean, you try to write these guidelines and NOFAs to be as clear as possible, so you don't have to do some interpretation. But I think we all know that these multifamily housing projects are very unique individually. They're approaching ending homelessness, some permanent supportive housing, offering services, different clients and resident bases. So there can be and site specific and location geographically specific. So there can be, every one of them is unique, and they may apply the guidelines and requirements a little bit differently. So unavoidably, sometimes there is a little bit of subjectivity in applying those regulations and scoring. Same thing with feasibility and underwriting, really looking for uniformity there, so that across all these programs and within the DSFA umbrella, we're doing things in the same way, so that when stakeholders apply to us, but then they also apply to the AHSC program, they aren't getting very diverse and different ways that we're looking at their application. That was really important to us, and we really continue to do that. We could check in with the other branches that have funding sources that are similar for multifamily, and we want, as much as possible, we understand we all do things uniquely, but as much as possible, things that are common across programs, we want to evaluate them similarly. Sponsor capacity, sponsor control, site control, those types of things. What we don't want is for someone to go to one program, get a pass, and then go to another program and get a fail. We're really working hard to avoid that. And that's one of the things that we tackled in this branch. Sorry, that was a lot of information for one slide. Last slide. Yes, Brian.
Just wanted to ask, has with the level of funding that is often needed for the multifamily housing projects, are you has the VIP or specifically the Supernova changed the stacking requirements for any of those? And I say that just simply because we may see some of those or through HAP and a layer of funding, and there'll be multiple programs within HCDs that may be used to supplement costs for development. And so I just wanted to see, because I recently learned that it has changed in some other programs. So I'm just kind of curious, has that also applied to Supernova and BIP?
In terms of like changing statutory requirements, just want to make sure I answer the question right.
No, I'm talking about your stacking requirements. There's
yes,
limitations
stacking.
on how many programs that can be applied within HCD and layered on top of each other. And so I just wanted to know, has that been reconsidered, or the stacking requirements are still the same?
We've the stacking, there was the 2021 stacking guidance came out right about the time that we were implementing, or a little bit before, I guess, the time that we had our first round. And so we have really been, that's how we approached it. But one of the unique things that we did, the funding, the stacking, the current stacking guidance allows stacking of 2 loans and 2 grants per unit in a very general sense. There's a little bit of nuances, and there's a list of programs that applies to. But one of the unique things, I mean, Supernova is a little bit unique in that we are offering 4 streams of funding at one time from 4 diverse programs. And so what we did one thing that we've said is you can't stack 2 of our funding sources at the same time on the same unit. We just didn't find that to be in the spirit of what we were trying to do. We're trying to provide you with the most funding sources that we can. We increased our loan limits because what we wanted was, we want to be the last stop. If you're going for tax credits or bonds and tax credits, we would like to offer you the funds that you need in HCD. That was the purpose of AB 434 generally, so that this is your last stop. Okay, some people, yes, they end up going to AHSC, so we understand that they're large projects, they need more funding. But in some ways, if you're coming to us, HCD would like to be able to offer you as much as possible. Then you go on to the Low Income Housing Tax Credit Program and try to get your final funding. And so we said there's no point in stacking VHHP and MHP on the same unit. That's added complexity, right? There's 2 loans on one unit. There's AMC has to monitor twice on one unit. So that was one way where we kind of shied away. We're like, we'll give you the MHP that you need, put it on this unit, and then if you don't want to assist all VHHP units, let's give you the MHP funding on these units, the VHHP funding on those units. So that's one way that we slightly modified the stacking. We definitely adhere to it, but we didn't want to add complexity and stack 2 Supernova funds on one unit, because that's just so much more work on the back end. Does that kind of answer your question? Okay, great. All right, and then lastly, I just wanted to comes full circle back to VHHP on the last slide and say that it was a give and take and a learning experience, right? The MFSN altered ways in which the VHHP program was administered. I think Becky highlighted, and I'll try to wrap it up in like a minute because I know we're over time, but please feel free if you have a conflict. As Becky mentioned, in some ways there might have been some more flexibility, or just sort of hinted at, there might have been some more flexibility in the VHHP program in relation to how the applications were viewed. But VHHP, when it came into the multifamily Supernova, it came into a highly competitive, highly oversubscribed program. And so one of the things that we felt was really important was that we need to evaluate consistently. Even if we have 4 different programs, and even if they have different subscription rates, it's only fair to do a consistent evaluation across the programs. And so it got a little tighter I think for some of what VHHP applicants were accustomed to. And that kind of broke our hearts a little bit, because we had to at times fail projects that maybe could have gotten through in the past. And even though VHHP was oversubscribed, we left money on the table because we were failing projects at threshold and they had to come back and apply. So that was an outcome that broke our hearts, but we felt like we were required to apply policies, procedures, guidelines consistently. And then on the flip side, a lot of the detail that Becky mentioned in terms of supportive services, service plans, that informed the way we looked at special needs units and special needs service plans generally. And so the stringency and the real importance of the details, so that those services are actually being provided to the tenants, MHP kind of absorbed some of that to a degree and applied that and used that. So it was a good give and take in terms of the two programs learning from each other. That's where I'll end my presentation. I know we're over time, so I wanted to just do a quick stop here.
Well, thank you so much, Gina.
Thank you, Becky.
Thank you so much, you guys. We really appreciate you coming and giving us this presentation. And we look forward to continuing to work with you more. Yes, Jocelyn.
I'm so sorry. I meant to react instead of raise my hand.
Oh, okay. I do that all the time. All right. Anybody else have any last questions before we depart?
And if we didn't quite hit the target, we're here, we're available, we're available for follow-up meetings, emails, whatever you'd like.
You totally hit the target, but we may have follow-up questions and ask for your advice on things. So we appreciate it and have a great week. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thanks, you too.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye.